Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Whole Energy Body Balance podcast, where we are exploring a healthy, sustainable lifestyle today. This is the podcast for Whole Energy Body Balance, where we explore all sorts of things that bring greater healing, connection, and harmony to humans and to animals. And we hope today that we will inspire you, challenge you at least a little bit. And if you are a person who wants to grow and create positive change and healing in your life, and in your animal's life, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Dr. Edward, the healing vet. And would you like to introduce yourself today?
Hey, everybody. I'm just honored to be here. I wish I was filming next to you in Australia. That would be even cooler. But I'll stay in Florida for now. I am Dr. Marlene Siegel. I've been doing integrated veterinary medicine for over 25 years, but I've been in practice a total of 40 years. So I don't know if I'm a little older than you, Dr. Ed. And
A little bit.
A little bit. So I would say really what I do, I used to call it integrative medicine, used to call it holistic medicine, but what I really call it now is bioregulatory medicine. And the reason I'm making the distinction is because so many people that are hanging their holistic shingle out, or they're saying they're an integrated vet, they're still practicing Western mindset where it's symptom management, symptom suppression, pill for the ill, diet for the disease, but they're not addressing the root cause of the problem. And what I do is I actually look for the functional problem. What is the root cause that is creating the symptom? And then how do we fix that?
Well, the whole constellation of symptoms, there's usually one or two things underneath that can be expressed in a lot of different ways, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. So we find that really everything boils down to a deficiency of essential nutrients, an overwhelming amount of toxicity, mitochondrial dysfunction, the little powerhouses that can't make energy and can't communicate effectively anymore. And then the fourth factor in there is trapped emotions. And when you put those four together, that's your formula for a disaster.
I'd probably add in there silent physical pain, which is caught up in the soft tissues. I'll just quickly introduce myself because in case you're new to this podcast and you haven't met me before, I'm Dr. Edward, the healing vet. And I help deeply caring people, pets and horses unfold profound healing and healthy relationship through somatic awareness, therapeutic touch, intuitive perception, and energy healing. So we're going to be exploring a healthy, sustainable lifestyle today. And you've already kind of started diving into that. Bioregulatory. What do you mean by that?
So bioregulatory medicine is a human approach that's been in Europe for hundreds of years. And it is simply understanding how the biology of the body actually functions, the biochemical pathways, and all the elements that help the body to do its job, and then finding what those areas are that are being interrupted. And then whether it's interrupted because there's a deficiency or a toxicity, or there's something happening that's causing a disruption to those pathways that leads then to the symptom of a dis-ease.
And what were the four things you mentioned again?
So number one is deficiency, and those are deficiencies of essential nutrients. Number two is toxicities, and those are overwhelming the 6 organs of elimination to where the body can't function and support itself properly. Number 3 is mitochondrial dysfunction, which is not just the inability to produce energy, but also the communication between the mitochondria and the microbiome, all the organisms that live in and on us. Number 4 is trapped emotions. Now, as you mentioned, pain is in there. Inflammation is the underpinning of all that we see. But the inflammation is a consequence of either deficiency, toxicity, or mitochondrial dysfunction.
Okay. So then let's work through these each in a little bit more kind of depth and detail. Let's start off with the deficiency and nutrients. So I'd be curious about a couple of things. One is, how do you work out what the deficiencies are, and then how do you remedy them?
So super easy and great question. We actually test. So my own personal motto is test, don't guess. And so we have labs that actually are looking for the nutrients, vitamin D, magnesium, B12, zinc, selenium, I mean, there's a whole list, a whole panel of nutrients that we're looking to see. Are they too low? Are they too high? Are they near the median? And so that's step number one, is we're looking for those deficiencies. And I'll define the essential nutrients as those nutrients that the body cannot manufacture in sufficient quantity on its own. So we were designed intentionally to have to eat these nutrients in our diet. And you can go on Google and look at essential amino acids, vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids. So they're known to everybody. The question is, why don't we have it in our diet in our modern days? Because our food is being grown in non-regenerative methods. And so the soil is stripped and depleted of the micronutrients. Therefore, the plants that are growing on that soil, even though they're growing because we're feeding them nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium, they're not getting those micronutrients into them that we need to have in our diet. So whatever is eating those plant materials that are grown on deficient soils, down the line, everything's going to still be deficient.
So can you have functional nutrition deficiencies where there is, and I'm going to talk a little bit about processed foods here, because they apparently are balanced and apparently have all the nutrients that are needed in them, but my experience is that animals can't access or use them.
Correct, because they're typically putting in synthetics. That the food industry was not designed to keep us healthy or our pets, and I think it's even worse for our pets. So these processed food diets, they are literally heated at ridiculously high temperatures, stripping all the nutrients. They're devoid of enzymes because they've been heated at such high temperatures. The natural enzymes that were originally in that food are destroyed. And then they try to make it healthy by adding back in synthetic vitamins and these minerals and fatty acids, which is just a formula for disaster, because these formulas are very high in carbohydrates. They're enzymatically dead. If it's a kibble or a dried food, then it doesn't even have the moisture that these animals were designed to eat. So I call it Franken food. And
Franken food. I call it dead. I call it dead food.
Yeah, well, it's dead food. It's Franken food. It's certainly not their biological diet, and it's certainly not sustainable. So it's not a surprise that we're seeing the levels of disease that we are in today's pets. So I don't know about Australia, but here in the US, statistically, we say that cancer rates in dogs are higher than 1 out of 1.65. It's nearly 100%. Cats, 1 out of 3, and that's highly underreported. But when we add in things like obesity, osteoarthritis, gastrointestinal diseases, whether it be vomiting or diarrhea, skin problems, osteoarthritis, autoimmune diseases, literally we've just named 100% of the animals that we see have some form of illness, and they usually become chronic.
Just taking a short little break from the actual podcast itself. Thanks so much for listening. I just wanted to let you know that I have a modality, whole energy body balance, that I've created over 28 years of working with all kinds of animals with all kinds of problems. And if you want to learn how to get your beautiful hands on your pets to find and heal their silent pain, anxiety and trauma, or if you would like to wake up your intuitive perception and learn how to use energy healing to find and heal all kinds of problems and distresses and traumas in your pet's energy systems, then pop into wholeenergybodybalance.com. We've got home and practitioner programs, so you can learn either to help your pets or you can get certified and build a beautiful business out playing with dogs and cats all day. It's a stack of fun. And now we'll head back to the podcast. Are you familiar with the concept of biophotons and biophotonic charge in living organisms?
I am. You know Richard Fluke, don't you?
No.
You don't? Okay, never mind. All right, so yes, I'm aware of biophotons. I'm aware of the energy in light and we as light beings and how we utilize that. Absolutely.
One of the things I've found really interesting is that you can measure biophotonic charge. Living beings emit a biophotonic charge, and how much and how coherent that kind of radiation is a very strong indicator of vitality, well-being, all that sort of thing. But if you get a conventionally grown cabbage and you get an organically grown cabbage, the organically grown cabbage has drastically more biophotonic charge. And when we eat these foods, and when our animals eat these foods, we're literally eating healthy light as
Yes.
well as the substance of the kind of, and, nutrients and all that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I utilize a lot in my practice is photobiomodulation, which is using light, and photodynamic therapy, which is using light in conjunction with a photoactivator. So typically a natural compound, something that has a lot of polyphenols, and we know what the activation levels, what light frequency would activate that. And then we can do that either topically or intravenously.
Intravenously? How do you do that intravenously? I haven't heard of that before.
So we have a special, it's a Weber laser. It's made by Dr. Michael Weber, and he's out of Germany, and he distributes this machine worldwide. So there's a fiber optic that is what goes into the vein. So we put a 22 gauge catheter, like a regular catheter goes into the vein. And then this fiber optic feeds up that catheter and screws in. So it's now a part of the catheter. And when we turn on the different colors, that color is picked up by the red blood cells, and then it's distributed around the body. So let's say we want to work on killing certain cancers. We can give a product like ICG, which is indocyanogreen, and that molecule is absorbed into abnormal tissue. And then we activate it with infrared light. And when we activate it, it becomes much more powerful, and it makes all these reactive species inside the tumor, and it causes cell lysis. So it's a fabulous way to be able to do cancer therapies without creating a lot of toxic side effects.
Okay, that's kind of high level integrated holistic technology. I like it.
It is. Yeah, we need to be doing more of this because it is quite remarkable. And can I share a case? Because I don't think this
I'd
is.
love you to share a case. Absolutely.
I have to write this case up. So it was a little beagle mix that came in. She's about 11 years old, and she had gone to her veterinarian because every time she went to have a bowel movement, she was screaming in pain. I mean, like blood curdling screaming. Now, given it was a beagle, that's what they do. But this dog was in a lot of pain and had blood every time she had a bowel movement. So they went to their vet. And the vet did a little digital rectal exam and said, oh, this dog has a tumor in the rectum. So they gave him a poor prognosis, recommended euthanasia, and they decided to come to me for a second opinion. So they come in and I do my exam. I put my finger in the rectum, and sure enough, there's a mass in the rectum. So we talked to them about doing the workup, finding out the deficiencies and the toxicities. We were going to get a biopsy of the mass, image it, find out what exactly it was. I could tell it wasn't the anal gland, but this was right in the rectum. And it was very, very painful to the dog. So we got all of our workup done. We bring the dog back in for a surgical exploratory. So she's under anesthesia now, and she's on the surgery table, and we have the table tilted so her head is down and gravity is kind of pulling everything. I put my finger in the rectum and there's no mass. And I went, oh my gosh, did it just fall forward? So I'm checking over the rim of the pelvis and I can't find the mass. So I'm a little confused because I know it was there. I felt it myself. We wake the dog up, and I just had that thought, check her again. And when I did, I could feel it again. And what was happening was she was prolapsing her rectum. So she had pelvic floor dysfunction. Go figure, old lady, right? So and pelvic floor dysfunction is becoming a really big, probably one of the top, next to cancer, one of the top female problems in the US. And so we started treating this dog with low-level light therapy or photobiomodulation, of course, correcting the deficiencies, the toxicities. We had her in the hyperbaric chamber. We would put the fiber optic in the rectum and actually did colors that would then increase collagen and increase support of that whole pelvic canal. And then we did exercises for the owner at home. We did fascia decompression, things that would strengthen the pelvic floor. Within 3 days to a week, this dog was having no more problems, normal bowel movements, no screaming. And we see her about once a month for little tune-ups, and she's doing fabulous.
Okay, so it wasn't actually a tumor.
It was not a tumor, but it was such an interesting case because no one had ever written up pelvic floor dysfunction in a dog. And yet this dog could have been euthanized over a misdiagnosis. So luckily
Absolutely.
the owners wanted to get a second opinion and they didn't give up on her. And they went through the whole protocol to get all of the, she was on processed food, so we had to change her to a raw diet. We had to get the right supplements in. We fixed the nutritional deficiencies that we identified with the right supplementation. We did detoxification for the heavy metals and the toxins that she had. And that's a lifestyle for them. This is an ongoing thing. It's not going to be, oh, look, we gave a pill, the problem is gone. We go back to living the life that we used to live. And that, if there's no driving point that I make in this entire conversation with you, Dr. Ed, is that we can no longer live this blind, toxic lifestyle where it's fast, cheap, and convenient and not expect to have breakdowns in us and our pets and Mother Earth. There's consequences for that. And it's really a very important time in the history of this planet that we need to wake up. We need to start paying attention to what we're doing in and on our body, in our environment, to our pets, and make those lifestyle changes so that we literally lead a more sustainable, healthy, longevity producing lifestyle. But we can't keep doing the same things that we were doing and expect a different result.
So you've been in practice for 40 years. I've been in practice for 30.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
just a young kid now.
Young kid on the block. Yeah, I know. And I moved into the more holistic type of stuff for a couple of reasons. One was that when I was only a year and a half out, I had a fellow vet who worked with horses' necks, and he started me off on my kind of physical therapies journey. But then a few years after that, I got chronic fatigue syndrome, and what I didn't know was Lyme disease, and was very unwell with that for about 20 years. And that's really what triggered me into the holistic integrative type thing, because I had to explore a whole lot of that for me to get well. So how did you, what's your journey as a vet been, and what moved you into this integrative type
So
regenerative bioregulatory?
Yeah, it wasn't a health issue for me, but it was for my horse. So we were showing horses, my two young daughters at the time. We were all into doing horse showing. And my youngest was 10 years old, still walk, trot, rider. And she was in the arena. They were undefeated at every level. They were just an amazing duo. And something happened in that show where the horse started to canter twice, loud noise or something, but she spooked uncharacteristically. And they called the riders into line up. The trainer is standing in front of their walk trot riders. And the horse just started to kind of tremble her neck like something was attacking it. And as the horse was making those neck gestures, the trainer reached her hand up thinking it was maybe her hair tickling her ears. And when she reached her hand up, the horse pulled her neck back, and it caused, later we realized, a spasm. And the horse reared in the air. Well, as you know, the number one cause of a rider's death is when their horse falls over and crushes them. So we had a 50-pound, 10-year-old child and a 2,000-pound horse. And no one had taught my daughter to let go of the reins and just jump to safety. So she was literally dangling from the reins in a double bit in this horse's mouth and acting as a fulcrum and literally pulling the horse over backwards. So So as the horse was realizing that she couldn't get her feet back on the ground, she squatted on her left hind leg and pushed herself like a plie motion. She pushed herself as hard as she could in the opposite direction of where my daughter started to slide off the saddle. But when the horse hit the ground, you couldn't see space between the two of them. So I truly did not know what I was going to find when I jumped over the rail. By the time I got halfway there, the horse had caught her breath and got back onto her feet, but my daughter was on the ground, not moving. So when I got there, she opened her eyes. Are you okay? And the only thing, thank God, that she hurt was her pride. But back home, we had a couple of more incidences where something just wasn't right. The horse started to do this again. And so I had equine vets come out and look at her, and they said, we don't know what's wrong with her. All we can tell you is she's not going to be safe to ever be shown again. She's 7 years old. She was a U.S. national champion in open division. That meant the trainer went in and beat all of the big guys. And she was also the same national champion in Canada. that was a big thing to begin with. However, this horse had saved my daughter's life, and there was nothing that was going to stop me from fixing that horse. So when the equine vets came back and said, here's your two options, you can put her out to pasture for the rest of her life, or you can put her down. And neither of those was acceptable. And that was my wake up. And I said, first of all, I don't blame you guys. I understand you don't have any other tools in your toolkit, but I'm going to fix that horse. And I don't care where I have to go to figure it out. And at that time, functional medicine on the human world was just in its infancy. So I was on every webinar. I was on every email list. I'm calling all these human doctors that are moving into functional medicine and asking questions. And they'd come back and go, I don't know anything about horses. You don't have to know anything about horses. You just tell me what you would do for a person, and I'll figure out how to extrapolate the information. And so that's what we started to do. I started with chiropractics, acupuncture. I was using laser. And that's all I had in my toolkit at the time. And 5 months after being told she would never be safe to be ridden again, that little duo went on to win the United States Youth Reserve National Championship, which is the most prestigious youth show in the entire United States. So,
wow.
Moral of story, never, ever let somebody define your possibilities, whether it's you, your child, your pet. There's always solutions. There's always answers. Not that you're going to live forever. It's not about that, but restoring quality of life, being able to do something that restores integrity and honor. Those are all a possibility. You just have to go a little further out of the sandbox into a world that you may not have explored. So when I entered that arena, there was no guidance. There was no teacher. There was no roadmap. I literally had to create it.
Awesome. What a great story.
Yeah. In fact, Lily just passed away this year. So she was in her 30s. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a horse who has ECVM, equine complex vertebral malformation, and I didn't know about it before I got this horse. Now I know a lot about it. It's a terrible, terrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really do much with it because it's a structural issue,
Yeah. So what Lily's issue turned out to be was literally the points on the back of her molars were not being floated properly. Mind you, she's in an expensive show barn, and they had their own dentist coming in, and they weren't filing her teeth properly. So her jaw was locking, and she couldn't break at the pole where she had to bring her neck down to be able to tuck her chin in. She couldn't do it because she literally had bones on the side from her teeth that were holding her jaw in place. So she was straining her neck for years, and that caused severe arthritis in her neck.
Yeah, that'll do it. So let's talk a little bit about toxicity. And so what are the main kinds of toxicity that animals and humans are being affected by, and what can we do about it?
So the toxins are coming in from multiple areas. Water is one big area. Most municipalities do not filter their water for glyphosate and heavy metals and a lot of other carcinogens. There's over 100,000 toxins that have been developed just since World War II. These are synthetic toxins that have been released into our food and water and animal supplies, and they are now circulating at ridiculously high concentrations in food and water, and of course in the livestock industry, our food supply. So that's a big area. And then, of course, the diet, because a lot of processed foods are coming from unfit sources of meat where they've been injected or roadkills or processed with all kinds of chemicals. And then chemtrails, I don't know if that's a problem for you in Australia, but we get sprayed almost on a daily basis. And you can just see the planes and you see these chemtrails and it just drops this fog on you. I live in a food forest, a self-made food forest, and I have plants that are blooming at the wrong time of year. They're making fruit the wrong time of year and has been now for a good 5 years. So it's really, the ground's becoming very toxic. The earth can't breathe properly. Aluminum is one of the biggest factors that we're dealing with. A lot of our pharmaceuticals have a lot of metals in them, vaccines, a lot of the products that we use topically can have a lot of toxins, plasticides. This is the BPA that is in so many things, plastics, the receipt, when you print your receipts, you
yes.
a little paper that it doesn't last very long anyway, because the letters go away very rapidly. Those receipts are loaded with BPA. So we've gone to wearing gloves, when we have to give people receipts or ask them, do you want a receipt? We can email you a receipt, but it's super toxic. So we have to look at our cleaning supplies. We have to look at the things that we're washing in and washing our pets in and doing our laundry in, because they're loaded with xenoestrogens, hormone disrupting chemicals, a lot of petroleum-based products, so many candles. You would think a candle would be innocuous, but if they come from petroleum-based products, when you're lighting them, that smoke is coming off is very toxic. Cookware. There's so many cookwares now that Teflon, the nonstick surface.
The forever chemicals, the PFAS and all those things are in
the
all non-stick stuff. And every time you use a non-stick thing, you are giving yourself a poisoning.
Absolutely. And, we know, especially with bird owners, they know not to have the birds near the kitchen, because if the birds smell that, they're dead.
Yep, they drop dead, literally, from a hot, the fumes coming off a hot non-stick pan.
So that's where they're coming from. What do we do about that? Well, we have to be better discerning shoppers. We have to vote for companies with our dollars that are making healthier products. So staying away from processed foods, getting good filtration on our water, things that not only filter all the way up to heavy metals and glyphosate, but also structure the water. It's another whole topic, but filtered structured water is what is in our bodies, and it's what our bodies utilize. So if we don't drink that, our body's going to try and filter it, and it's going to try and structure it. But it's taking metabolic energy away from other things to be able to do that. And it's not that effective. So we need to be better at doing things like that. We have to stay away from as much processed foods as possible. We need to go back to DIY, make your own soaps, make your own cleaning products out of essential oils and vinegar or hydrogen peroxide, super easy things.
And, with your water, even if you just stir it one way and then stir it the other, and while it's still moving, do it 3 or 4 times in both directions, that's enough to make a significant difference to the structuring and life force in the water.
Taking herbs that were grown organically in the sun, the water in those herbs is structured. So when you drop those herbs into your water, it will structure the water as you're circling it around. Yeah.
Yeah, that and fermenting stuff. Like we have a Jun ferment on our bench, which is like kombucha, but it's with green tea and honey instead of black tea and sugar.
Mm-hmm.
That's another way to take your water and make it very, very alive and fill it with life force, and it's all structured because of the SCOBY working through, not just physically changing the sugars, but energetically affecting the water.
Yes. And structuring is a wonderful thing, and I think it's absolutely critically important. But structuring won't necessarily filter your toxins out. So I think doing both is very, very important. And there's now systems where you could have it at your sink. So for me, I have a system where it makes structured filtered water. And on the other side, it makes structured filtered and hydrogen, molecular hydrogen in the water. And that molecular hydrogen acts as an antioxidant. It donates its hydrogen positive ion to the free radicals and the oxidative stress that we're under so much of these days. And that's, maybe let's explain that a little bit for our listeners, is that our body just doing its own metabolic thing, breathing, walking, eating, living, we create a certain amount of reactive oxygen species. These are kind of damaged cells. And back in the day, we ate a diet that had an equal amount of antioxidants. So we're creating oxidative stress. And then we want to eat foods that balance that oxidative stress so that it doesn't become damaging to the overall system.
Yeah.
And that worked great before our modern society. But now the amount of oxidative stress that we create on our bodies, we could physically not be able to eat enough enough foods to offset that oxidative damage. You can't possibly eat enough antioxidants unless you take them in supplement form and or a more concentrated form. So molecular hydrogen water is one beautiful answer for helping to contribute more antioxidants. And then, of course, eating a cleaner, healthier diet and trying to get good sleep and breathe diaphragmatically and make sure you're in a state of gratitude. That actually helps your pets as well because they're going to entrain to your energy. So the more you live a healthy lifestyle, your pets will automatically have that benefit.
That is very true. I strongly agree with that. It's and this gets back to the same thing of eating food that is alive and has a whole strong charge of life force energy, a biophotonic charge, whatever you want to call it, because that adds to your pet's vital life force battery. I always think of animals having a vitality battery, which is kind of an abstract thing, but
yeah,
the more you can do to make that battery stronger so it can hold more vitality and keep it charged, then the happier and healthier and longer lived your pet will be, in my experience.
That's literally your answer to longevity. Because when that life force starts to go down, you're on an exit path.
So mitochondria. Now, I've had chronic fatigue syndrome, which I strongly believe is a mitochondrial disease. And likewise, Lyme disease, I believe, really parasitizes because it's an intracellular parasitic bacteria. It gets in there and basically siphons off everything from your mitochondria. I got to tell you, from personal experience, having mitochondria that don't function is not a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can only imagine the lack of energy. So we do see Lyme's disease in our pets as well. And they typically come in with very high white blood cell counts. They have tons of inflammation. Their C-reactive protein, the measure of inflammation, is super, super high. And we also measure something called TK1, thymidine kinase 1. And it is a dysregulation of DNA, and it's released from cells that are dying from necrosis. Apoptosis, which is programmed cell death, that doesn't release TK1 because that's a normal process. That regulatory pathway to pick up that DNA is different. But when we have cells that are dying from either cancer or something like a tick-borne disease or a rickettsia, that's a spirochete that's breaking down the cell, then you get that dysregulation, and the TK1 is measurable. You can actually pick that up. So we'll see that as indicators of Lyme's, because in most traditional practices, the methodology to test for Lyme's is not accurate. So this dog that we had been in Connecticut, which is high Lyme's area. They tested for Lyme's disease and it was negative. But I tested when he came to me 6 months later. I did bioenergetic testing and he was very positive, and he was positive for co-infections as well. So we started treating him with combinations of course, we changed his diet. We got the terrain built back up. He was on a raw diet, the right supplements. He was on products to reduce inflammation at the cellular level. We were using ozone. We were using hyperbaric oxygen, frequency lasers, and photo biomodulation on that dog. And within literally 48 hours, this dog could lift its head. It's running around the yard. It was acting like a puppy. The inflammation was virtually gone in 3 weeks, but the TK1 had got higher. And that was because these spirochetes were really trying to replicate. They were on the threshold of being killed off. And so they were like, oh my gosh, let's get on the move here. And so they had gone higher. So even though the TK1 had gone higher, clinically the dog was a lot better. But because he was better, the owner said, oh, well, we're going to go ahead and stop treatments. Ironically, the owner had Lyme's disease as well.
Yeah, well, it's an intracellular parasite. So if it's inside the cells, it's kind of hard to actually pick it up with any kind of test. It just hides away. It's a bugger of a thing.
Yeah. So with bioenergetic scanning, we pick up the frequency of it. And so we're pretty accurate.
Yeah. So what do you do to treat thick mitochondria? What kind of strategies and things do you use?
So interestingly, we do everything that I just described to you. So we go through the entire lifestyle and try to get rid of as many stressors as possible. And then we make sure all the essential nutrients are on board so that the animal has at least the functional foundations for the cells to work. And then we have specific products that are going to reduce inflammation, heal the gut. And then we start doing therapies to help start producing mitochondrial biogenesis. We want to make more mitochondria and we want to make healthier mitochondria. So there is a syndrome in people, it's never been discussed in animals, called the cell danger response mode. What it means, have you ever heard of this?
No, but it sounds interesting.
Very interesting. So it's only been probably in the last 10 years that this has actually been discovered. So the vagus nerve is the nerve that when stimulated turns on the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's our rest, repair, digest system. On the opposite of the autonomic nervous system is the sympathetic nervous system. And that's the one that gets turned on when you have to run from danger or fight. It's your fight flight. Okay? So imagine these are on a teeter-totter. So you have sympathetic, you have parasympathetic. When a danger presents itself, sympathetic gets all turned on and your parasympathetic is on standby because it doesn't need to do anything until it finds out if you survived or not. Then once the danger is gone, then your parasympathetic side comes in to fix and repair, digest, reproduction, all the other things that happen when you're not trying to save your life. Well, in situations of people where they are under chronic stress, chronic pain, chronic illness, they discovered that there is a ventral route to the vagus nerve. The dorsal route is what turns on the parasympathetic nervous system, but the ventral route gets turned on when there's nonstop high sympathetic tone. And it tells the mitochondria that the mothership's going down. And if you want to survive, as many of you as possible go into the bunker, cover your ears and just go la 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 until you find out if your organism, if your planet survives or not. So what they discovered was these people who were doing everything right, they were doing the right medications, they were taking the right supplements, they were doing the right therapies, but this portion of the population wasn't responding. And that's when they discovered that this cell danger response mode, the mitochondria aren't listening because they're hiding in the bunker. So you have to then figure out how to really turn off that sympathetic dysregulation. It's truly a dysregulation of the nervous system. And when you can fix that so that the individual can truly go back into rest and repair, then the whole process goes back into normalcy and then you can start to heal. But it may take doing a variety of different things from detoxification to neural input changes to changing your thinking to repatterning how you're thinking, anything to fix that dysregulation because you've got to get out of sympathetic tone.
Oh, God, yeah. And I use relaxing touch for that. And I've seen some remarkable improvements in anxiety symptoms, trauma symptoms. And one of our students had a dog that had had a hideously violent beginning to life. And when they took this dog home, it had awful gastrointestinal issues, vomiting, diarrhea all the time. It had terrible, terrible skin and allergies. And it had extreme anxiety. You know, if they tried to take it outside the yard, it would start going into full panic mode, doing backflips and all this kind of thing. But it took them about a month to get this dog to even accept therapeutic touch. But within a couple of months of regular therapeutic touch, the anxiety went away, which medication did nothing for, by the way. And the gut and skin issues was being medicated for and maybe had a 10% improvement. It didn't really fix it. But over 9 months, without changing anything else, just continually bringing the body back into that parasympathetic state, everything improved by about 90%. So, yeah, I totally agree that one of the most important things you can do for sustainable well-being is to be anchored into that green zone of healthy relaxation, rest, digest, regenerate type state of being. Yeah.
Absolutely. We do a few other things, like we'll do tapping, which a lot of people may be familiar with. I've got a cough.
That's all right.
So tapping is one. It's kind of similar to what you're doing, but we're tapping on acupressure points that stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. There's frequency tones. There's deep breathing exercises, which we can't really teach the dogs how to do deep breathing, but we can do fascia decompression. And it's amazing what happens when we release the fascia, because the fascia is holding a lot of that emotional imprint. So that's pretty important. And then there's specific supplements that we use a lot of, like a fermented beta glucan that helps with mitochondrial health. And there's a few other products that we'll use that help to improve the metabolism of the mitochondria.
So wow, you do a lot of cool things. I wish I had some of the technology you're talking about here. I mean, I've just got a little home visit practice, so I can't.
We can make arrangements for that, Dr. Ed, and I'll come and do your training.
Oh, maybe we'll talk about that at another point. So, trapped emotions, your fourth thing, yeah. So, how do emotions get trapped, and how do you untrap them?
So we know about trapped emotions. The Chinese figured this out, 3,000 years ago. And so when you talk to Chinese practitioners and they know that certain organs have emotions associated with them. So we know that the liver is associated with anger, and the bladder and kidneys are associated with fear. And so we know that these relationships exist. So what happens is when we experience a horrific emotion and we don't know quite how to deal with it, let's say it's an emotional trauma, like you found out your spouse was cheating on you, or there was a death that you weren't expecting, or, God forbid, something horrible, and you don't quite process that. Well, if you're dealing with grief, you may have lung problems, or for women, a lot of their breast cancers come from the trapped emotions of feeling unworthy, guilty, shameful, hurt, unresolved, those kind of issues. So what happens for the animals is that, this gets a little woo-woo, is they are, well, let me back up, because I think we live in a hologram. I think this is a fun adventure, and we incarnate and we have all of these helpful clues around us. Now, sometimes people aren't aware that they're in the hologram, so that they're in the hologram and they're a victim of the hologram instead of they are playing the game and helping to move it in the direction that they want to move it to. But once we become awakened, we start realizing that nothing is really happening by coincidence or by accident. So pet parents have a particular pet in their life at a particular time in their life with a particular challenge or personality or whatever. There's a significance there. And if we can slow down long enough to ask the question, how interesting, why would I create that? And what is the blessing behind this experience? If we're open to getting the answers, they will normally come. And so I think that these animals present with their challenges, and it can be a reflection of something that the pet parent needs to experience and deal with. Sort of like, when you open your computer and you have all these files in there, and as you bring up the file, you can't just yell at your computer and say delete, right? All the files they're all in there. But if you pull up a file and you read that file and you go, okay, I don't need that file anymore, so I'm going to hit the delete button. And what does the computer automatically say when you hit that delete button? Are you sure? And then you have to hit it a second time to confirm that you're going to delete that file, because you can't ever recover it again, right?
That's right. He's gone.
Sure. Yeah. So our subconscious mind is a big computer. And when we come across a program, especially something that we're hardwired to, we keep repeating it. Sort of like when the GPS, you're driving to a destination and you miss the turn and it keeps saying, make a U-turn, make a U-turn. But you don't make a U-turn, you just keep going because you're ignoring the signal. When we have very strong emotions in our lives, it's an indication that that experience has happened for you multiple times. So many times you're hardwired to it. Whether you believe in past lives or parallel universes, this is absolutely not our only pony show here. So we've done it before. There's programs in our subconscious mind, and the ones that we need to deal with are the ones that are going to come to the surface first. So when we can look at our life, our experiences, our emotions, and realize that that can be our guidance system, it takes on an entirely new dimension. So what I mean by the guidance system is when we are on path, like you're on a well-traveled road, everything is smooth. You're not getting off the side, you're not bumpy. But when you start to get off your trajectory, things start to become more challenging. You get more doors closed in your face. You have poor opportunities. It just seems like nothing's going right. And so you get frustrated, you get the longest teller line, your car's flat, you can't find your keys in the morning. These are all indications that there's some resistance going on in your life that you need to slow down and deal with. But then the question is, well, what is that resistance? And the easiest way to figure it out is to identify the emotion that you're having at this time. Is it frustration? Is it anger? Is it guilt? Is it shame? Is it whatever? It doesn't matter. What is the emotion of that particular incident? And then you ask yourself, have I ever experienced that emotion in the past? And when was that? And then what was the circumstances? And you'll find that it's the same experience, a different person, different place, different time, but it's the same emotion. Why? Because we haven't deleted it. You haven't transmuted it from the low vibration frequency into the high vibration frequency. How cool is that? So I'm going to take a sip.
That's all right. I mean, we all get a little frog in our throat now and then. And yeah, this whole thing you're talking about energy and consciousness and karmic patterns. And so often I see animals that have a similar problem to at least one person in the household again and again and again. And often I have people who have a string of animals that have had similar kinds of issues. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Yeah.
100%. And it's showing up because that's our opportunity to do something about it. But if you're not conscious, if you're not using critical thinking skills, if you're not playing the game, then you're just going down the luge without a steering wheel. So you're kind of bouncing here and bouncing there, and you're a victim, and you're never really in control. And that's not the game we're supposed to be playing. We're supposed to be able to take those low vibrating emotions, the anger, the shame, the guilt, the blame, the hatred. You're supposed to take those low vibrations and move them to the high side, the opposite and positive emotion. I think that's what the game is. And so the lowest vibration before death is shame. And I remember when my kids were little, we used to go to a theme park, and they would be in the little bouncy, where the kids are all running around and playing. And I would sit there and nonstop hear parents shaming and blaming their little 2 and 3-year-olds. And I don't think they did it on purpose. It was a language. That's all they knew. That's what they grew up with. And that's how they were treating their children. They didn't think twice about it. I taught redirecting children's behavior. So for me, it was ouch, 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 ouch. You shouldn't be doing that to your poor kid. And so if you realize that you have the opportunity to identify the emotion, and then what is the opposite high vibration of that emotion? So even when I say the word like hatred and bitterness and anger, they have a heaviness about them. They're
feeling,
dark.
yeah. There's and if you live in those feelings, your life is not happy.
Exactly. But now if I talk about grace and gratitude and compassion and joy and love, like I think we just got lighter, and you can feel that energetic difference. So I think that is one of the things our pets come into our lives to help us with. All of nature can do it. I mean, like, in the entire area is a hologram. But if you're into animals and they are your soul babies, then you're going to pay more attention to them, and you're going to do things for them that you wouldn't do for yourself. Which is so interesting, right? So a lot of times that is the segue that animal, from a spiritual perspective, is dragging their pet parent and saying, here, I want you to get this. So here's your opportunity. Like, lights
Hey, I'm
on.
the canary. I'm the canary in your coal mine. Look at me. Look at me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, even we're all going to leave the planet, Dr. Ed. Like, no one's escaping this hologram. So it's
No
not
one
that.
gets no one gets out of here alive, they tell me.
Exactly. So it's not that we're not trying to have an exit strategy, but what are we doing while we are here? Are we being the best representation of ourselves? I mean, just think about the fact that everybody that's born has likes and dislikes, and some of it is going to be innate and some of it's going to be learned behavior. But we see kids that are 2 and 5 years old that are master musicians or
Yeah.
artists or athletics. They came into this planet with those skills, and then they had a family that could foster them and help them to expand on that. I don't have those skills. I can't even sing a note off on purpose. So music wasn't my thing, but yet I was born knowing I wanted to be a vet. I literally came out of the womb and wouldn't play with stuffed dolls. I played with stuffed animals. So thank God I got to be
Yep.
able to do my profession. And I'm 40 years, like we said, and I'm more excited and more passionate and more energized about practicing now than I was my first 5 years out, which were so hard. You're trying to put everything that you learned together and not make mistakes. And, it's all brand new. It was so challenging. But now, to me, it's the most rewarding profession. But not all of our colleagues feel the same way. There's a lot of burnout.
No, there's
A
a lot
lot
of
of burnout. Our hours are ridiculously long. We don't get paid what other fields can get paid for the amount of work and goodness that we do. And we have the highest suicide rate of any industry, at least here in the US. I don't know about worldwide.
no, it's exactly the same worldwide. It's no different anywhere else.
Yeah. So we look at all those factors and we go, why is that? And we certainly know that as veterinarians, and I've never met a veterinarian who didn't meet this, we want to do the right thing. We want to help our patients. We want to be the hero in the story. You want to do good. And it is heartbreaking when you don't have enough tools. That's why I love what I do now, is because I never run out of an opportunity to try something. May not always work, but at the end of that experience, that pet parent knows they've tried everything. One of the biggest emotional problems that most pet parents that I deal with face is guilt and shame. Like they didn't
Oh
try
yeah.
hard enough, or they did something wrong. And so with this methodology, they have an opportunity to do as much as they can within their own means. And then we all still hurt when we lose our loved ones. That's part of the life. But they don't have the same guilt and shame because they know that they've learned something from the experience. They doing the best that they can with the tools that they have, and they're going to do better the next go around.
Awesome. So where are you, and how can people find you? And do you have any kind of resources and things that people can connect with and invest in that you offer?
Oh, tons of stuff. Okay, so let's start with, I'm in Florida. So I do some level of telemedicine. I can't diagnose big medical problems, but I have an empowered pet parent. I mean, legally we can. So we have a program that I created called the Empowered Pet Parent Program. And that program teaches pet owners about diet, digestion, detoxification, the proper testing, about emotions, about mitochondrial health. So it is a very, very deep dive, but in layman's terms, so that they can see, what does that lifestyle look like? This is not a pill for the ill and a diet for the disease, guys. You have to change what you're doing. Einstein said you can't solve problems with the same mindset that created them. We have to think differently. We have to behave differently. And it has to become who you are if it's going to be sustainable, which is not hard. It is actually so much happier and healthier and more rewarding. So don't let that be daunting to you. And no analysis paralysis, guys. We're not going to let you go, oh my God, there's so many things I have to change. I can't do anything. I have my pet parents take a piece of paper and fold it in half. And on the left, they do column A. On the right is column B. And I don't care if you mix them up. But column A are all the things that you're learning about that you should be doing, but you're not doing them yet. And you just list it. You just list it. It's non-judgmental. These are my goals. And then on the other side are all the things you absolutely should not be doing, and you still are. And I just have you pick one thing from column A to start, one thing from column B to stop. And then
Oh,
once
I'm going to steal that. That's kind of cool. I like
it
that.
is so easy. And then after that becomes comfortable, then you pick something else from column A and something else from column B. And you just keep going. And really, in a very short period of time, you've accomplished a lot. And if I have a husband, wife, or partners, I'll have one pick their own set to stop and start, and the other something different. And now we're like twice faster than we were before. So it's really, really easy. It's just making conscious decisions. The real benefit of all of that is when we make better choices with our dollars by reading labels and avoiding the toxins, then we're going to have healthier pets, healthier us, healthier environment, and Mother Earth is going to be healthier because we're not putting so many toxins in her. Like
Absolutely.
we don't use plastics. I don't use any commercial cleaners. We make all of our own DIY. I've got recipes if anybody wants, happy to share, or we'll send you product. So all of that is really important. So my courses, I highly encourage my pet parents to
Okay.
take the course because it just gives you such foundation. It's not expensive. And you go to dr and then myname.com. So drmarlenesiegel.com. And I have a free ebook that goes through the 6 steps that we covered in the beginning. We have the courses, which they can take. And I have courses for veterinarians as well.
Oh, cool.
There's a course for pet parents teaching them how to do fascia decompression on their pets at home with no equipment. Unbelievable. It's life transforming.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I've taught thousands of people how to do that. And it is one of the most beautiful things any human can learn to do for their pets is fascia body work.
absolutely. So we've got that. And then I've got blogs. I have an inside community that we just launched. So there's not a lot of people in there yet. It's only a few days old. But by the time this launches, maybe we'll have a whole lot more people in there. And we're forming a supportive community. We want to be shoulder to shoulder with people who want to be more conscientious, more awakened, more positive in
Beautiful.
the world, to have more control because for me, it's kind of like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, right? She had the power all along. She just didn't know she had the power.
And that is like us. So go to www.drmarlenesiegel to get connected with Dr. Marlene. And I've just got a couple of closing questions because we've only got a few minutes. I think you've got to go off and have some beautiful body work, which I totally encourage. Very good
Yes.
thing. So what do you think is humanity's biggest blind spot when it comes to our shared journey of evolution and healing at this time?
Not becoming awakened. Because when you're not awakened, you're not taking responsibility. And it's only when we take responsibility for our outcomes, whether it's your health outcome, your financial outcome, whatever it is, it's not taking responsibility because we're not being conscious of the fact that we really do have our own control.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And what is the change that you want to be and inspire others to be in our shared world?
Well, my training program is called Transforming Vet Medicine. So I want to see every pet parent and every person and Mother Earth return to some level of connectivity, of restoration, of healing, of truly getting back to who we are as holographic beings in Earth School. So I
I
want to be part
like
of that
that. Think of it.
awakening process. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been really beautiful hanging out with you today. It's been a lively and far-reaching conversation. We've covered a lot of topics, but I
Yes.
think in essence, you know, you want to be sustainable. You got to wake up to the fact that everything is alive and that we've got to care for everything: geology, geography, living beings, plants, each other. And you've got to get aware of what things to avoid and what things to stop doing and what things to do more of. And personally, it's not the easiest journey to do that, but it is incredibly worthwhile. And thanks so much for sharing your wisdom today, Dr. Marlene. It's been really beautiful having you on the show.
Sorry, I just dropped you.
There goes the camera.
I'll
The
get you
camera's
back.
falling down.
I'm going to find you again. That was not a
That's all right.
ending, but
Oh, well,
because I'm having to stand, I
made
have
us,
it on a box.
it
So
made us all
that's
smile,
what I
which is
meant to
good.
do. So ungracefully, but yeah, that was an ending to be remembered, wasn't it?
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I hope you keep coming back and listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed it, please tell your friends, share with your friends. And if you've got any suggestions of other beautiful people who might be able to bring beautiful insights into how to heal humanity and pets and the earth and make everyone's lives better, reach out and let me know, because I'm always happy to have suggestions. So goodbye for now, and we'll see you in the next. Just taking a short little break from the actual podcast itself. Thanks so much for listening. I just wanted to let you know that I have a modality, whole energy body balance, that I've created over 28 years of working with all kinds of animals with all kinds of problems. And if you want to learn how to get your beautiful hands on your pets to find and heal their silent pain, anxiety and trauma, or if you would like to wake up your intuitive perception and learn how to use energy healing to find and heal all kinds of problems and distresses and traumas in your pet's energy systems, then pop into wholeenergybodybalance.com. We've got home and practitioner programs, so you can learn either to help your pets or you can get certified and build a beautiful business out playing with dogs and cats all day. It's a stack of fun. And now we'll head back to the podcast.